In July of 2018, Evan and I made a trip to Peru to visit Machu Picchu. This is the story of our trip. We started with an overnight flight from the United States to Lima, Peru, and then into Cusco, which is at 12,000 feet, quite an elevation change. We stayed in the San Blas area of Cusco, which has a great view of the city. At 12,000 feet, our room was a little cold. We spent the first 2 days exploring Cusco, admiring the Inca architecture. It's amazing, after 500 years, the seams still fit like they were put in yesterday. We also had some interesting other art that we saw. At 12,000 feet, hiking back to our rooms were a little hard, but it was always interesting to see what would be on the street corners as we walked past. At one point, a procession for a saint was going by during a festival time. Walking along the road gave us lots of shopping opportunities, though many times we had no idea what we were looking at. Shopping in the crazy mall gave us lots of sights and smells that were somewhat overwhelming. Cusco's main square is a busy and vibrant space that marks the colonial center of the city. We did visit the Church of Santo Domingo, which sits over the top of what used to be the Inca Temple of the Sun. The building is aligned closely with the sunrise of the winter solstice. At that time of year, the sun's rays fall directly into a large room, like an Indiana Jones movie. We did take a trip up to Sacsayhuaman, which was an area above Cusco that had Inca ruins. Pretty amazing to see the huge blocks that they moved to get this site built. What is Peru without a llama? We did try to recover after long days. Also, we did cook our own food, and then we did have to filter our water because of the water purity in Cusco. We met up with REI Adventures, the tour group that we would be spending the remainder of the trip with. Our first stop was to the large gate that controlled all the commerce coming into the Cusco Valley built by the Incas. Our next stop was to a village made by the Wadi. The Wadi were a pre-Inca people group that the Inca came in and conquered. The Inca farming techniques were legendary. Using terraces and water canals, they were able to bring to life areas that could not sustain crops otherwise. The Incas were not only functional with their water usage, but they were also very artistic in how they used water too. One of the benefits of traveling with a tour group is that we were exposed to the tradition of dyeing of wool done by the Peruvian women. After a cup of tea, we visited another Inca village and then headed out on the Inca Trail. The Andes mountain range is the world's longest and extends to 7 countries. The Peruvian Andes run along the western side of the country, almost parallel to the Pacific. Another good point about traveling with a tour group is that I didn't have to arrange any of the hotels for the nights. The next day was another hike. We hiked from around 13,000 feet up to over 14,190 feet. The day was cold, overcast, and windy with some rain showers intermixed, but we had a wonderful time with our hike. The next adventure was lunch. We experienced a traditional Peruvian meal baked underground. The vegetables were placed on a bed of hot coals and the meat under that. Here we are with our Peruvian hosts at their home. The wind and the rain created a rare double rainbow. Pretty exciting, but not the best conditions to be in. We ended up the day at Pisac, an amazing area of terraces and buildings the Inca created 500 years ago. Evan always enjoyed me taking his picture. Next we stayed in the Sacred Valley. Evan and I had this huge house to ourselves. Kids in all cultures will adapt to whatever situation presents themselves. Bike too big? No problem. Snow? Tough it out. The next day we were supposed to go over to the Lars Valley over a 14,000 foot pass. We stopped at a 13,000 foot area to look at grain storage bins the Inca had made, but because of the snow we were not able to go any farther. Since we weren't able to go into the Lars Valley, we stayed in the Sacred Valley and did multiple day hikes. We saw lots of ruins and more llamas. We also watched a man make bricks for his home out of straw and dirt. The amazing beauty of what God has created was so evident on our day hikes. This stone that you see here was milled and then was supposed to be dragged down and put into the other side of the valley for building onto the temple. Guinea pigs are all over the place in Peru. They're grown in homes and end up on people's tables as a delicacy. Finally, we're on the train headed to Machu Picchu. Our room below Machu Picchu was amazing. We spent a day and a half touring Machu Picchu. What struck us really wasn't the architecture. We had seen lots of neat Inca architecture over the last few days. What struck us was the mountains, the amazing beauty that God created all around this area, that the Incas recognized and placed Machu Picchu right in the middle of it all. The Sun Gate, at 8,900 feet, was once a guardhouse that marked one of the principal entrances to Machu Picchu on the Inca Trail. The hardest thing we did at Machu Picchu was hike to the top of Huayna Picchu. The climb is 1,000 feet in 1 mile. It starts out easy, but then becomes more and more difficult, where the steps become somewhat sketchy. We have proof we did make it. Coming down was somewhat sketchy again. We had an amazing view of Machu Picchu from our high vantage point. With this, looking back, you can see the switchbacks that the bus took to get us to Machu Picchu and the steepness of the terrain. Evan and I had an amazing time. We especially enjoyed seeing Machu Picchu and once again glorying in how God created such a diverse ecosystem.